The sun in Northern California was less of a celestial body and more of a personal grievance. For Felix Cross, a PhD candidate who could explain the molecular structure of a Renaissance pigment, but often forgot where he parked his bike, the afternoon heat was a physical weight pressing down on his pale shoulders. He looked like he'd been carved out of moonlight and expensive stationery, brilliant and brittle all at once. Maya, a photography major with the habit of noticing what others missed, watched him from across the lecture hall. She noticed the way he flinched when the light shifted, the way he never carried a water bottle, only a heavy, matte black thermos, and the way his eyes darted toward the shaded corners of the room as if measuring escape routes. They met in the introduction to visual narratives, a class that smelled of projector dust and caffeine. Felix sat in the back, correcting the professor on the chemical stability of 5th-10th century oil paints with the precision of someone who had lived through them. Maya found him fascinating, not for his intellect, but for the quiet dissonance between his brilliance and his fragility. He was the kind of man who could recite the Latin names of pigments, but forget to eat lunch. The day he collapsed was the first time she touched him. The lecture hall had been sweltering, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. As the class spilled out into the concrete plaza, Felix took 3 steps, turned the color of ash, and swayed. Maya was there before he hit the ground. His skin was shockingly cool, like stone in winter. "Hey, easy," she muttered, bracing his weight. "You're gray, Felix. Let's get you to the campus clinic." "No," he gasped, voice tight with panic. "No hospitals, no doctors, just dark. I need dark." He was vehement, desperate. Maya didn't argue. She guided him to her car and drove him to a small apartment near the edge of campus, where blackout curtains were already drawn tight. He practically fell through the door, swearing he just needed sleep. Over the next month, Maya tracked the anomalies. Felix never attended daytime mixers, had professional-level knowledge of hematology, and treated sunlight like a predator. She noticed he always wore long sleeves, even in the heat, and that his thermos was never far from reach. Finally, after a late lab session, she cornered him. "Are you actually a vampire?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe, "or just the most dedicated goths I've ever met?" Felix froze. He saw the lack of fear in her eyes and let out a long, weary breath. "The former," he admitted. "And look, I know I looked like a disaster last month. Most people assume I'm frail, but I have a DHD. In humans, it means losing your keys. In my case, it means I get hyper-focused on a research paper for 20 hours and literally forget to feed. My executive dysfunction is quite literally life-threatening." Maya stared at him, a laugh bubbling up. "You're a vampire who forgets to eat because he's distracted by science?" "It's an embarrassing biological reality," he muttered. She offered her help, a safety net for emergencies. Felix politely declined, certain he would never be so undignified again. He was wrong. 2 weeks later, during a record-breaking heat wave, the dizziness returned in the old library archives. Maya saw his hands shake as he tried to steady himself against a shelf of dusty manuscripts. Without a word, she led him to a secluded restroom in the basement, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the sink, pulling her collar aside. "Felix, now, before you pass out in the stacks." It wasn't a horror scene. It was quiet, intense, and strangely intimate. The sharp, grounding sting and the sudden electric hum of his energy returning left them both breathless. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright again, and hers were steady. Something had shifted, not just in his body, but between them. Later that night, they sat in Maya's car at a lookout point above the city lights. "Why California?" she asked. "It's the brightest place on Earth. The exploding in the sun thing is a myth," Felix explained, rubbing thick white cream into his hands. "Unless I'm underfed, the sun doesn't kill me. It's just a miserable, stinging migraine. I want the best research labs and the best art." He held up a bottle, and I used the good stuff. Australian SPF. It's regulated like a therapeutic drug there. If it can handle the hole in the ozone layer, it can handle a Tuesday in Palo Alto. Maya laughed softly, watching the way the cream glowed faintly under the dashboard light. Their friendship deepened into something that felt inevitable. Maya became his anchor, setting recurring phone alerts. 7 p.m. Check your thermos. 8 a.m. Apply Australian SPF. She learned his rhythms, the way his focus narrowed until he forgot the world, the way he hummed under his breath when he was calculating something impossible. Felix, in turn, learned her silences, the way she observed before she spoke, the way her camera became an extension of her curiosity. They were opposites in motion, his chaos orbiting her precision, but the biological variance bothered him. He was immortal. She was 60 years away from cognitive decline. The choice to turn her wasn't a gothic ritual. It was a logistical necessity for a love that had become his only constant. When Felix turned Maya, the change didn't make her scattered. It intensified her. Her observant nature sharpened into predatory focus. Her personality became a high-frequency hum that grounded Felix's chaotic mind. When she opened her eyes as a vampire, she didn't just see Felix. She saw the microscopic vibration of his pulse, the rhythm of the palm trees outside, the faint electric buzz of the city. Her humanity didn't vanish. It crystallized. Life as a vampire power couple in California became a finely tuned operation. Felix remained the brilliant, hyper-focused scientist. Maya became the project manager of the night, managing their finances and blood supply with chilling efficiency. Their feeding sessions became domestic rituals, their version of quiet intimacy. Maya would scroll through photography feeds while Felix leaned into her, the dopamine rush finally settling his restless brain. They argued sometimes, vivid, short bursts of emotion that ended in laughter. "I forgot it was dawn," Felix would protest. "You were hyper-focusing again," Maya would reply, already pulling him into the shadows. "You're lucky you're pretty." Every day before dawn, Felix would sit Maya down and carefully apply the Australian SPF to her face. It was the one moment his mind didn't wander. "You're staring again," Maya would whisper, her voice carrying the low, hypnotic vibration of their kind. "I'm admiring the craftsmanship," Felix would murmur, rubbing the zinc cream into her skin. "You're the only thing in California brighter than the sun." She would smile, checking the shared calendar. She had already added an entry for the year 2126, remind Felix. "He's been my favorite distraction for 100 years. They became legends at every university they touched, eccentric night owls, brilliant researchers, inseparable partners. Every 20 years, they moved, reinvented, rebuilt. Maya handled logistics with terrifying speed. Felix handled the research with chaotic brilliance. To the world, they were just two academics, but in the quiet of their home, they were a perfect machine. Felix, the scattered genius. Maya, the sharpened prism. Their friendship had become love. Their love had become obsession, and their obsession had become eternity. The sun still rose over Northern California, indifferent and relentless, but in their darkened apartment, the light was no longer a grievance. It was a reminder of everything they had mastered together, the balance between chaos and focus, science and art, hunger and devotion. And when the first rays slipped through the cracks of the curtains, Maya would glance at Felix, her voice soft and certain. "We built forever out of sunlight," she'd say, and he, distracted as ever, would smile faintly, already lost in thought, already calculating how to make eternity last just a little longer. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Don't forget to comment and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next story series. We have some incredible narrations coming up that you won't want to miss. Bye for now.